Hi everyone, this is part 4, I believe, of Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid. And we left off where Rowley and Greg were in the library. If you're wondering what that bang was all about, well, here's what happened. When I got up and moved to another desk, some grown-up took my spot, and I guess Greg thought it was still me, and he tied the guy's shoes together. Then when the guy stood up, he fell backward. After that happened, Greg got out of there as fast as he could. I figured I'd better get out of there too because I didn't want that guy to think I was the one who tied his shoes together. I followed Greg into the children's section where there was an empty table. He put his stuff at one end and I sat down at the other so I didn't have to be too close to him. Greg said we should take another study break, but I said I was going to keep working. Then Greg balled up a piece of paper and tried to throw it in the trash can across the room. He missed, but he kept shooting balled-up pieces of paper, which made it hard for me to concentrate. Then Greg finally made a basket, and he said he bet I couldn't make the same shot as him. But when I told him I really needed to study, he said I was too scared to try, and then he started acting like a chicken. I tried to ignore him, but it wasn't so easy, especially when he got up on the table. Then all of a sudden, Greg sat down on the table and started making grunting noises. At first, I thought he might be having a bathroom emergency, but when he got up, there was an egg. Well, I didn't want Greg to lay another egg, so I balled up a piece of paper and tossed it at the trash can. And I wasn't looking to see if it went in, but I guess it did. Greg said my shot was total luck, and there was no way I could make it again, even if I tried 1,000 times, but I decided I wasn't gonna try again. Greg said I couldn't retire, but I said, yeah, I could, and it was his own fault for giving me the idea anyway. One time I had my birthday party at the bowling alley, and Greg hit a strike with his first ball. Then he retired, and it ruined the game for everyone else. When Greg couldn't get me to unretire, he tried making a backward shot himself. But he went through like 1,000,000 pieces of notebook paper, and he couldn't even come close. I was just glad he was leaving me alone because I was getting a lot of work done. I finished the practice test, and then I was going to go over my notes from class. But that's when I found out Greg was getting all his paper from my notebook. Well, that made me really mad because Miss Beck said we were allowed to look at our notes during the test. So I got down on the floor and started picking up all the balled up pieces of paper. I figured maybe I could smooth the pages out when I got home and then tape them back into my notebook. But Greg just kept shooting, and he finally got one in by bouncing it off my head. Well, that made me really mad, and I started chasing Greg with that egg he laid. But I guess we were making too much noise, and that got us in trouble with the librarian again. She made me call my parents to come get us, and that was fine with me. I had to stay up 2 more hours uncrinkling my notes and taping them into my notebook, and was up another half hour researching stuff on my dad's computer. The time I made the biggest mistake of my life. Okay, this is just part 2 of that last chapter, but I got so mad writing it, I kind of had to take a break. But I've got to take some deep breaths because this chapter is going to be even harder to write. The next day during the math test, I tried to use my notes to help, but they were all out of order. Plus, it was hard to concentrate because Greg kept trying to ask me questions. Some of the other kids were getting stressed out about the test too because Timothy Lautner got dizzy and Miss Beck had to take him to the nurse's office. Well, as soon as Miss Beck left the room, Greg scooted his chair real close to mine and looked over my shoulder. I whispered to Greg to go away because he was trying to cheat. But Greg said it's not cheating since we were study partners and we both had the exact same information in our brains. I guess he had a point, but I still didn't feel good about it. Then Greg said he already finished his test and was only trying to make sure I got the right answers. And that made me feel kind of nervous because I wasn't positive about a few of them. So I let Greg check over my test, and believe me, if I could do everything over again, I wouldn't have let him. Yep, I got 180 for number 8 too. Yeah, this is some really good stuff. After a minute, I started thinking maybe Greg wasn't just looking over my test to check my answers, but that he was copying me. And it was too late to stop him, so I tried to pretend it wasn't happening. Greg pushed his chair back to its normal spot right before Miss Beck came back. And when the bell rang for the end of class, she went around and collected all of our papers. The next day, Miss Beck gave us our tests back, and I got an 89. I was kind of disappointed in myself because I usually do a lot better. But Greg got an 89 too, which was a really good grade for him. But if you think this chapter has a happy ending, well, guess what? It doesn't. When class ended, everyone got up to leave, but Miss Beck told me and Greg to stay in our seats. After everyone left, Miss Beck told us she wanted to talk to us about our tests. She said she noticed we got the same grade and we got the same answers right. But Greg said that made sense because we were study partners and we knew all the same stuff. I felt pretty glad Greg was my friend because he's real good at explaining stuff like that to grown-ups. I thought Miss Beck was going to let us leave, but she didn't. She said it seemed a little suspicious that our tests were identical, and she put them side by side to show us what she meant. Well, that's when I found out Greg copied everything on my test, even my name. Miss Beck said it was obvious that Greg copied my papers, so he was going to have to serve 3 days of detention, plus he had to take the test over. I thought Miss Beck was going to give me detention too, but she didn't. But what she said was worse than detention. Rowley, I am disappointed in you. Miss Beck said she wanted us to learn a lesson from this, and we both swore it would never happen again. Miss Beck said, well, that's good, because once people know you're a cheater, it follows you wherever you go. Then Miss Beck said we were free to go. Greg got up and left, but I gave Miss Beck a hug to show her I was sorry. But I think maybe I hugged her for too long. Okay, that's enough, Rowley. On the way home from school, all I kept thinking about was what Miss Beck said about being a cheater. Well, I learned my lesson, but I'm not so sure about Greg. The next day, Miss Beck made Greg sit in the back of the class and retake the test. But Greg was asking me questions pretty much the whole time, and I had to pretend I couldn't hear him. And if you're like Rowley, why are you still friends with Greg? Oh, and if you're like Rowley, why are you still friends with Greg? Well, my answer is that Greg's still a good friend. He's just a bad study partner. Plus, he's the only person I know who can lay an egg. Okay, we will stop there.